Look, lady, we're in trouble. The whole world's in trouble. They're all around us and we never knew it. You can only see them with these special glasses. I swear to you, we're being controlled by these things. I don't know what they are or where they came from, but we gotta stop them.
All right. I'll do whatever you want. Whenever you want.
Good morning, Bitcoins. This is MadBitcoins live. I don't even know what day it is. Today is April 5th, 2017. The price of Bitcoin is $1,148.68. We are coming to you live from San Francisco, California. The percentage of SegWit support is 31%, looks slightly up from 29%. The percentage of Litecoin SegWit support is at an all-time high of 69.9%. That's exciting. The price of Litecoin is also up at $11.22. Looks like a tripling from the early four where it had spent much time. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about today what Greg Maxwell posted to the Bitcoin mailing list. Perhaps Jihan is opposing SegWit because he's secretly mining with incompatible patented hardware. Mainly, they call it ASIC Boost, and it used to be software, but now it's hardware, so maybe it's software that's inside the chips. But we're going to find out more later because we're joined by Jimmy Song, at Jimmy Song, Bitcoin developer and entrepreneur, who has just published an article on Medium attempting to explain, like we were five, Gregory Maxwell's Inhibition proposal. This could be the secret to Bitcoin scaling, the reason behind the drama. And to give you the news about the drama, we're joined live by Jimmy Song and Tone Vays. How's it going? Tone, say hello.
Hey everyone, I can't get enough video podcasting today, so I'm back taking over MadBitcoins.
And we've got Jimmy Song here to do the heavy lifting and give us the technical details. Now, I gave a basic instruction of what I think is going on here. There's perhaps 30 of this ASIC Boost. Jimmy, what can you tell us about it? What happened today? Greg Maxwell posted on the mailing list?
Yeah, he did. And it was, I think when I saw it, it was a big shocker to me. It sort of described what ASIC Boost was, why he was doing it, and what he thought, what he's doing to sort of mitigate it. But basically, ASIC Boost is, it looks like it's a patented technology that you can use to specifically for Bitcoin mining to sort of save 20 or 30% on electricity or work in order to find proof of work. And this is obviously a huge advantage for a very low margin business. But yeah, the basic gist of it is in order to find proof of work, you need to do a lot of these hashes that are called SHA-256. And SHA-256 is an algorithm that basically spits out a 256-bit number with any data that you put into it. And I guess as they were designing this thing, they found out that you can optimize it using the fact that SHA-256 works in 64-byte chunks. And the Bitcoin header, every Bitcoin block is 80 bytes. So you have 64 bytes at the front and 16 bytes at the end. And if you can compute sort of the SHA-256 of one half or the other, you've effectively halved your work. And that's basically what they did. You have 16 bytes, 12 of which are sort of determined beforehand, and then the other 4 are the end of in that section. There's it's called the Merkle root, and it's sort of a fingerprint of all the transactions in a block. And what they can do is, since it's only 4 bytes, they can find a lot of collisions and figure out, hey, you know what? Like there's a lot. We can compute all these collisions and then use that to compute proof of work more efficiently. So you get twice the speed boost if you can compute the one half free, it ends up costing something. So you get like a 20 or 30% boost to your speed or work or energy utilized or whatever.
All right, so we've got to slow down quite a lot. Everyone who's watching at home needs to like and share the video. And basically what I'm hearing is maybe half of this Bitcoin string isn't so random. And maybe they've got a way of figuring out half of it faster than everybody else that gives them a 30% bump on their winnings. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. It's so I mean, if you think about sort of mining as like collecting lots of lottery tickets, they can collect more tickets faster because their machine's printing it a little faster or something like that. And basically, they found this. From what I've heard, this is an optimization found by multiple different groups that were in the mining space. And this is something that obviously, if you can take advantage of it, you certainly would. I mean, there's no way that anyone would give up this sort of advantage if they had it.
Now, wasn't this spoken about before? I remember hearing about ASIC Boost. Is there something different? Is the ASIC Boost in the hardware now? What does that mean?
Well, so ASIC Boost, I think, is specifically an algorithm that you can code into your ASIC, right? ASIC stands for Application-Specific Integrated Circuits. So you can take an algorithm and just make a circuit board out of it, and it runs just so much faster than if you use software and CPUs or GPUs or whatever. So essentially, ASIC Boost, I think, has been around a while. Just not many people knew how it worked. I certainly didn't before today, and it was kind of cool getting to learn all of it. But basically, that's what happened. Is Greg figured out exactly how it worked and from his email, it sounds like he reverse engineered some mining equipment and figured out exactly how that happened.
So again, we're imagining the complete cloak and dagger situation. An alleged company has these miners with the special instructions on their chips, and they're in a secret facility. But somehow one of them gets out to Greg Maxwell, and Greg Maxwell reverse engineers the chip, figures out the secret code, and reveals to us that allegedly one of these mining firms is using ASIC Boost. Now, why would using ASIC Boost, obviously it runs 30% better, you're going to want to do it to get great money, it's awesome, but why would you not want to adopt SegWit? Is it because of ASIC Boost?
Yeah. So this, I had to actually email Greg Maxwell to find out exactly what he was talking about. And obviously, Dr. Adam Back helped me to understand this as well on the Bitcoin Core Slack channel. But basically, this is very related to SegWit and a little bit specific to how ASIC Boost works. So the main sort of computer science structure there is a Merkle root, and that's part of a Merkle tree, and that's a binary tree, and you have to compute the Merkle root by sort of combining your neighbor and running SHA-256. Anyway, it's all technical, but basically what you need to do is you need to compute the Merkle. In order to compute the Merkle root, you need to compute the Merkle hash for the left side of the tree and the right side of the tree. And the thing is, if you compute it beforehand, like anything on the left side shouldn't affect anything on the right side. So you could compute the right side and compute many variations on the left side and be able to come up with multiple Merkle roots very easily. What SegWit does is it has something called a witness commitment in the Coinbase transaction. And that means that the Coinbase transaction, of course, is what gives the miners free money whenever they find proof of work. I guess it's not really free, but basically it's what gives them the coins. And as part of
hey, Jimmy, can you just make it clear that Coinbase transaction has absolutely nothing to do with the actual Coinbase, the company?
Yes. So Coinbase transaction, well, the company took the name from what people were calling Coinbase at the time. But the Coinbase transaction is always the first transaction of any block, and it's the reward that the miner gets for themselves whenever they find a block. Anyway, as part of SegWit, what you need, you have all these other transactions called SegWit transactions that are different than the normal transactions that are in the 1 megabyte block. So in order to validate that those transactions are all there, you have something called a witness commitment. And this is a Merkle root of all, not just the SegWit transactions, but all the transactions. And this is the point that I was missing when I was studying this, is that it contains every transaction in the block, including non-SegWit transactions. The only one that's not included in the Merkle root of the witness commitment is the Coinbase transaction. Take all of these transactions and you come up with this one thing called the witness commitment, and that needs to go into the Coinbase transaction of every block in SegWit. Now, if you do that, what you end up, I told you before that you have the left side of the tree not affecting the right side of the tree. Well, now because of this, and it includes every transaction, a Merkle root contains every transaction, now the right side of the tree is affecting the left side of the tree, and you can't compute these things very efficiently anymore. So what's happened?
It messes up the ability to cheat, right?
Well,
what I'm seeing is if you have to include that in the Coinbase, then you can't just predict that right side. It's not as easy to predict.
But you can't predict it. Well, I mean, you can predict the right side, but the right side starts affecting the left side. It used to be that they were completely independent, but now because of the witness commitment, the left side is dependent on the right side, and it suddenly the math comes off. You can't generate as many of these Merkle roots very easily because the right side now affects the left, and that instead of just computing 2 to the 16th left sides and 2 to the 16th right sides and multiplying them, and you get 2 to the 32 different Merkle roots, in order to compute that many, you need to actually compute 2 to the 32 different Merkle roots. And that's a major cost and no longer makes ASIC Boost actually feasible. And that's kind of what's happening. But the thing about Gregory's proposal is that this isn't just SegWit, right? SegWit is just one thing that sort of puts a commitment into the Coinbase transaction. There are lots of other potential Bitcoin improvements that require commitments into the Coinbase transaction. For example, there's something called fraud proofs that you may or may not have heard of. And that can, for a light client like your Bitcoin wallet on your phone, you may get, so you have to communicate with somebody about exactly which transactions exist or whatever. They can sort of tell you whatever they want. Well, they can't tell you whatever they want when it's something that's actually in a block. But they can't prove to you that something isn't in a block, right? That's the negative. But you can prove a negative with these things called fraud proofs, and that would be very useful for a lot of applications. Well, that too would require some sort of commitment hash into the Coinbase transaction, and this is sort of the idea behind this proposal, is that, hey, you know what? Like, miners are opposing this, but this may inhibit a lot of other improvements that would be good for Bitcoin, but they would oppose because they have ASIC Boost, and that's the idea behind it. Shocking news, incredible. Miners oppose it, but the future way forward, we probably need this thing. We probably need to make this change, which breaks their fancy way of making more money. This is now hopefully explaining what was previously a technical issue about block size. It was about the urgency of full blocks and the urgency of transactions, and the altcoins were catching up to us. We had an urgency argument, but now we're seeing it more of a 30% cartel argument. And this was, of course, added to today with the political drama. We had this tweet from Jihan Wu, later deleted by Jihan Wu, but saved by Janine and the Internet Archive, thanks to both of them. The tweet reads, ASIC Boost, do you have any basic understanding of patent law or basic conscientiousness? We should kick these people out of our community. And of course, the first tweet below led back to our earlier video
I've come to UASF and compromise, and I'm all out of compromise. Let's go to Tone Vays. And Tone Vays, what do you think about the political solution? Is Jihan out is here? Is he made a big boo-boo? Did they do this? What's going on here?
I'd want to throw some questions at Jimmy. I mean, I have my opinions of what this means. To tell you the truth, like I literally read, I was doing my live show as this news broke. I went and read what Greg Maxwell wrote. And without reading anyone else's opinion, everything I was thinking was, I didn't even know Jihan was involved. Well, now it makes it even better. I'm like, this is the best Bitcoin piece of news I heard this entire year, probably. I mean, I'm really enjoying this. But Jimmy, what do you think this means going forward as far as segregated witness, or but basically, what does this mean for Bitcoin, not only from price standpoint, but also from getting segregated witness in and shutting up the big blockers?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a complex system, you know, like everything affects everything else. And who knows how the miners will react? Sort of, are they going to come out and deny that they're using ASIC Boost? I don't know. I read something on the dev mailing list recently. I think it was posted in the last hour or so. The Stratum protocol for getting into a mining pool doesn't let you change the right side of the tree. So they're wondering, well, if you can't do it as like joining a mining pool, that means that it has to be very centralized in order to do that. So like we're sort of at, there's a lot more information that needs to come out before I think we can have any sort of decent prediction of what's going to happen. But this is obviously pretty big news, and I'm sure people will be reacting to it. What I can't even tell you the sign of like which way this will affect things, because yeah, I mean, this is just one thing out of a million things that I'm sure will be coming out in the next few months.
No,
right?
I actually like your position on the issue. Now, of course, my job is to speculate. That's what I do.
And of course, it's my understanding that Samson already has hats.
I gotta meet Samson one day. It sucks I've never met him. His tweets are amazing. But so my job is to speculate. So I'm gonna do my job and I'm gonna speculate. This is how I see it. Now, everything in Bitcoin is, you know, generally ass backwards as far as you know, the way like all libertarians think, and then the Bitcoin reality does the complete opposite of all of their opinions. But like in reality, what happens is when you're caught cheating, you stop cheating, right? Either you're forced to either you get kicked out of the game.
That wasn't a pre-Trump reality, that stop cheating thing when you're caught.
Well, it's not even cheating, right? That's the thing. I used a very bad term. That wasn't cheating. They weren't cheating. They
capitalism.
Innovated.
They were gaining an advantage.
No, they did. They gained an advantage. Like I don't even have a problem with that. I really don't. They found a technological advantage and they exploited it. But once this advantage becomes public, especially when the public has discovered your advantage, you know, compromises the network as a whole. You either need to voluntarily stop and say, well, yeah, we had the advantage because we're smarter than everybody else, and we did it. But now, because it will be seen as an unfair advantage now that it's known, so they can either stop voluntarily, or the community is going to force them to stop. Now, if the community forces them to stop, it's going to get real ugly, because then the community is going to want to eliminate these ASICs altogether. So the best way to handle this is for them to stop this voluntarily for the sake of the community, and admit that they were just stalling, And we all knew they were stalling. I mean, I've been saying it for weeks, if not months, that this was a stall tactic.
And remember,
and
that's why it's been so frustrating for the technical people. They were trying to have a technical discussion. Things were getting political. It got confusing for them. And it's because it wasn't technical is what it seems now.
Right. Well, not just, I mean, I'm not that technical, and it just made no sense to me logically either. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing I want to say is I am very, very happy that of all the people to bring this to light was, the evil block streamer, Gregory Maxwell. Right. I'm being sarcastic, obviously. Gregory Maxwell was one of my favorite guys in the space. So the fact that this was discovered by Blockstream, that everyone thinks, is out for themselves, and they're bringing this to light, and he already came up with a solution that allows this to be fixed without forcing SegWit. Right. And I also thought that was great. And he didn't go out of his way, like forcing people to do anything. He didn't even know like at what activation level this should enter the system. Like he really just like proposed his best ideas. But the fact that it came from them really solidified the fact that this is the right team for the job. And I hate it when people like give them a hard time that, oh, these developers sold all their Bitcoin early. They're not even holding Bitcoin. Well, guess what? The fact that maybe they're not holding Bitcoin makes them a lot more in doing the best possible things for Bitcoin instead of just trying to make more money from their position. So I'm really happy about those things. I'm wondering what are your thoughts, Jimmy, on everything I just said?
Yeah, I mean, there's
some might describe it. Sorry, Jimmy.
Oh, go ahead. You can go.
Well, some might describe it as playing the fiddle while Rome burns. I went to their presentation at the Bitcoin developers meeting about the BEC32 addresses, and it was a very small technical detail about fixing errors in addresses, perhaps even addresses written down, perhaps over a phone call. And it seems very minor and technical, but they had an incredibly brilliant solution to it. They worked on it for a year. And I think that's, again, the kind of people that we're dealing with this Bitcoin Core and Blockstream team, is that they're just really into the details and they're really into putting out a good product in Bitcoin. And this discovery, and as well as their other discoveries like the bugs in OpenSSL, show what a team they are. So I agree with Tone here. But Jimmy, do you agree? What's your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's kind of like amazing technically that you can figure this out, like reverse engineering a miner. And yeah, it's still kind of blowing my mind that this sort of very clever way of optimizing, just from a technical standpoint, it's pretty admirable, right? Like figuring this out. As far as, all the other stuff, like, I don't want to use like loaded terms like cheating. I mean, they found an optimization. It's pretty good. The thing about miner equipment is that they require pretty long lead times to create. I mean, I'm sure everybody in your audience that's ever owned a miner or to go get one or somewhere, it takes a long time to make them. So this optimization has been around a while, and I would be surprised if, the other mining manufacturers didn't at least know about it. I'm going to guess that this is the best compromise that maybe we can come up with is, Signal SegWit, just keep using this, and then we'll just sort of like, if you do that, then maybe we'll signal it like far enough in advance that, or we'll delay it long enough that you can sort of make your money back on whatever you did to get to the, whatever investment you had to make in all the ASIC Boost stuff. I mean, that seems kind of fair. I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to speculate on like how a compromise will be made because, like you guys were saying, it's inherently kind of political, right? Like, they have a lot of influence, and they do secure the network by hashing and finding proofs of work. So it's that part's a little bit more murky to me as far as like how this is going to play out or what's going to happen as a result. I do hope that there's a path forward where Bitcoin stays unified. I think that for me is more important than any particular feature. That's me, but that's my particular take on it.
Well, let's all assume that we're still echo. Somebody.
Yeah, I don't think that was me.
All right, Jimmy, are you echoing?
Am I echoing?
We might need headphones, but everyone have headphones?
I think we're okay now.
All right.
Yeah. Oh no, Jimmy, I was gonna say you mentioned the other miners. I don't know if you've seen Tour de Meesters. I can never pronounce his name right. I don't know if you've seen Tour de Meesters tweets today, Jimmy. I'm gonna probably go to his account and pull it up, but I just wanted to show my tweet from earlier that where all I see from other developers creating these altcoins and all these projects, even like Zcash, everything is designed for like insiders to make some kind of a profit. And all I see from the Bitcoin Core developers is they're trying to just create a more even playing field. And every time there is a bug, they're trying to create an even playing field. And that's like the opposite I see from Dash developers or like all these other ones that are just looking to make, more money for themselves pretty much with all these schemes. But Tour de Meester sent a tweet where, I don't know if it's still up, I'm gonna go look for it, where they interviewed KMC Miner, the one that went out of business out of Iceland. And they basically said, like, they thought that the Chinese had some kind of advantage because they couldn't understand how they're able to like invest all this money. I'm gonna go try and pull it up. It was really interesting. I don't know how new it was. It might have been like a year old. I hope he didn't delete that tweet because I know he deleted some tweet. But that's pretty much what KMC said. They couldn't understand how the Chinese invested so much money into mining and how they were planning to get a return out of it. And this might have, I'll look for it now.
I think I've seen that actually, and it was a quote from them saying like they must have something else because there's no way the numbers would work. And I think people knew about it a while ago. And obviously, pretty much every other mining equipment manufacturer has gone out of business except for the ones in China. So I'm guessing that that's probably what happened. To your point earlier about like altcoins that seem to help out the founders a lot. I remember reading something from Charlie Lee a few years ago about how he started Litecoin, and he was saying basically that at the time there were other altcoins that were being launched, but they were like pre-mined and everything else. And he said, the only real thing that I did was I spent 4 hours changing the proof of work to script. And I just made sure that it was completely fair. And I told everybody the launch date. That's all I did. And I was like, wow, first of all, you can code that in 4 hours. That's pretty good. And second, that the fact that you made it fair is what made your coin popular. There were a lot of other contenders to Litecoin at the time, but they're the ones that came out on top as a result of fairness. So,
ironically, the fact that it was fair made it unpopular the last 2 years because nobody cared. So it's a really weird dynamic when it comes to altcoins.
Yeah, I mean, but it's getting popular again because they might activate SegWit. So it's kind of these things go in cycles, I guess.
Even with that, it was the most predictable of pumps. Once again, not to say I bought any, but it was just sitting there. Everything else was getting pumped, and it was still at $4. But again, just because it's obvious doesn't mean it's easy to put your money in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But going back to the idea of what we're going to do going forward, assuming that we're all capitalist, it would make the most sense to stick with Bitcoin, right? You got caught cheating, you get a slap on the wrist, maybe some of your computers aren't as good. Do they have to get all new computers? How bad is it for them going forward?
Great question. As far as I can tell, you still do a lot of the same operations. So their mining equipment, I'm sure, will still work. It just won't be as profitable. And you know, I like, there are only like 2 or 3 mining manufacturers at this point, and they're all making buckets of cash, I'm sure, just selling the mining equipment to other people. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But as far as what we do going forward, I'm like, if it's known that there's going to be, if this proposal gets accepted, then, you know, you just build it into the next generation of mining equipment, which probably doesn't come out for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, maybe even a year. So you just sort of build that in, and you're okay. I mean, you lose.
So maybe they
or just get stuck with it.
Mining with their advantage for 3 to 6 months. Maybe
Yeah,
this could be a.
Yeah, that could be a compromise. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. It's
But what if they want to scorch the earth? What if they just decide, we got caught cheating, we're embarrassed, we're gonna fork anyway? Is that a possibility?
I think so.
No.
I think that's certainly a possibility, but I don't know.
Do you think that, Jimmy? Do you think that's possible?
I mean, to some degree, I mean, it wouldn't be like it wouldn't be. I think a lot of other things would have to play into it, and I still think of it as sort of a low probability event. But I would take the complete other side of that. I mean,
if you were willing to break off, if you were willing to go it alone before, why not just stick with that idea? I mean, Civil War.
Here's why. Because I thought it would have been crazy for anyone to join that side. I thought it would have been crazy for anyone to join the Bitmain side back when I thought they didn't have an advantage, where their only advantage was building chips. Now that they have an additional advantage on top of building chips, building special chips that give them an edge across the same chips, why on earth would anyone compete with them for mining on that chain? In fact, if this bug isn't solved within the next 6 months, Bitcoin itself might actually begin to die, because people won't want to compete against someone with such an advantage when there is a proposal on the table to remove that advantage and even the playing field. If anything,
it does sound like Jimmy's saying they could develop these chips in 3 to 6 months. So if it's an arms race, it's not that long.
Yeah, the big wild card here is who has what patents, right? Like, because you can sort of enforce injunctions in court and things like that.
I don't think so.
I mean, even in China, I mean, I know that's not a correct thing to say, but
yeah, I don't know.
I don't think so, because you can run these mines anonymous. These companies, these mines, they're not like
maybe you just break into their facility, get a copy of their chip, and just make your own.
But the Chinese are gonna go into Venezuela and go after the Bitcoin mines there? Come on.
Well, I mean, you need to manufacture the chips, and I think the chip manufacturing is almost all in China right now. I mean, not just these chips, but like every kind of chip. All the really good chip fabs are in China, I think. So
well, as I was discussing earlier, if you ship the chip, you lose a whole bunch of money. So what you really want to do is make the chip, take it across the street, and immediately start mining as fast as you can from that last instruction to that first mining. You want to go.
Right. That's why anybody. This is why anyone buying Bitmain's chips is always behind the ball. But now, if Bitmain is,
unless you were across the street,
but you wouldn't be across the street, right? That's not really how it works. I'm
just saying it's going to stay centralized. And the other issues were, of course, cheap power in China, chip manufacturing in China. Yeah, all of that together, we have a centralization problem. And it's not just political; it's actually affecting things.
I mean, people were buying these miners from them. I mean, other than the whole BitClub,
Butterfly Labs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Butterfly Labs was a different case, right? I was talking about like cloud mining. And I mean, people were kind of buying these chips because they thought they were, as good as Bitmain themselves mining. But now, if they know that, some chips have an advantage, again, yeah, I used a bad word. I shouldn't have said cheating. It's only cheating if you get caught, and I wouldn't even. I wouldn't even call this cheating. They just found a technological advantage. But now that everyone knows, either you got to open it up to everyone, or you got to stop, because anything else is going to degrade the confidence of Bitcoin. And I think this is going to force SegWit in there. I think people will, disappear for like 6 months because they were on the wrong side of the scaling debate. They will disappear for like 6 months. The user activated soft fork will kick in. We're going to get SegWit in, and the fix to fix this problem may not even be needed. It will be there, right? But you just get SegWit in and you solve this problem. Either that, or you go with the hard option and just change the proof of work algorithm and get all these ASICs out of here. Which is not something I'm advocating for, but if they don't want to. If the miners don't want to play on an even playing field, the system will tell them to go fuck themselves. And they can make their own chips. They can go fork and they can mine their own coin. They can be like, I don't know, like OneCoin, just mining their own coin. No one's going to compete with them.
It's an excellent point, Tone. And often cheaters are caught and nothing happens. They go on and they win more Super Bowls. And you have these old graphics that aren't even updated anymore. Look how many more rings there could be. So again, yes, the team that's out there, you win, you optimized. Like, you didn't cheat, you're smarter, you're capitalist, you're the best. You won, you got 30% for all these extra months. It's wonderful. We had this whole debate and this discussion. But now what are you going to do? Are you going to come back? Are you going to take the slap on the hand? Or are they going to have to go with this change the proof of work structure thing that completely destroys all the ASICs? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about worst case scenarios. The tech people decide that it's over. What happens, Jimmy? They go to a different kind of proof of work, no more SHA-256?
Well, so I think this proposal is very interesting because it's not going to be, or it certainly doesn't feel like it's going to. Who's going to vote against their own interests, right? Like, because if you have the 20 to 30% advantage, then why would you vote against yourself? But that said, maybe they see the writing on the wall. To some degree, people always think, hey, you know what? We know exactly what these miners are going to do because they're just going to follow the money. Well, yeah, you can follow the money short term, but it may not be good for you long term. So it's kind of hard to know unless you have like their deck that they're showing to VCs or whoever's investing in them. You have no idea. So you need to know that first before you can make any predictions on miners.
So even in the current environment, the miners own too much of the hash power for the dev team to change the proof of work algorithm, unless they did a user authenticated soft fork, but maybe a hard fork or a user authenticated proof of work change.
Well, so they've been talking about a user-activated soft fork, I think, ever since Shaolin Fry posted on Bitcoin Devs. It wasn't even that long ago. But that seems like what people would be advocating Gregory's proposal for. And if it gets through, it doesn't really hurt miners that much. And it's hard to know, right? Like, I remember Wang Chun from F2 Pool made that tweet, like, it's hard to, we're not taking a position because it's hard to, cooperate with people that consider you their enemy. And everyone thought, oh, the core's not your enemy. Core's not your enemy. I kind of have a different take on that. Maybe he's thinking other miners, and they're just as much an enemy as core is, right? Like, and maybe at least from my perspective, he's just sort of like putting them both at arm's length because he's not sure which way to go. And I wonder.
And again,
if
we
they
expect
would like
the miners to be competitive. We want the miners to be cutting corners, making faster chips, bigger memories, bigger ASICs. We want this. We want faster transactions, etc. Right? I mean, this is
Yeah, I mean, it's great for the network the more secure it is, and the more proof of work there is. Of course, there's the network's more secure and it's harder to roll back. But I don't know what's going to happen. But I would imagine that there's if this proposal takes flight and if people want it to happen, then what's going to happen is, there's going to be a user-activated soft fork or something like that. And if miners don't cooperate, I can see sort of a proof of work change, in which case, I'll be out long before that. But that would be pretty disastrous. So, in game theory, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen because everyone else can sort of see what's coming up or what moves the other person can make. And this is why war tends to be incredibly difficult to predict. And I imagine it's the same here. If the miners know that this is the end game, then they're going to change their current action, and they might just say, hey, you know what, like maybe SegWit's the better option. I don't know. This is where like getting into the business of predicting on these things it gets really, really tricky, and you look like a fool afterwards. Because hey, you know what, you predicted this, and everyone knows that's what you predicted, so they're like actively going against that predicted outcome. So it's hard for me to say.
The enemy of my enemy is my enemy. Let's go to Tone Vays with the screen share.
Right. So Tour just reached out to me, and maybe he's watching, and he did take down the tweet. I don't understand why. I kind of understand why, because he tweeted it out as like something said like 3 months ago, but it was said over a year ago. And I think that makes it even more relevant that it was said over a year ago. So when so Sam Cole of I think that's KMC Miner, right? Right. So when they folded up, KMC Miner, and this was his quote. Even with free electricity, we cannot see how they will ever get this money back because he says the Chinese invested hundreds of millions. Either they don't know what they are doing, but that's not very likely at this scale, or they have some secret advantage that we don't know about. And I think that's an amazing quote. And perhaps this has been around longer than people think. I don't know if I'm still not sure, since we don't know how long this has been, on the market. But I thought this was a great tweet. Tour, if you're watching, get this back, get the date right, and put this back out, because I think this is really, really important. Other miners already went out of business potentially because of this. Or maybe they figured it out a year ago and they spent all this money mining, looking for that little edge. And I don't blame them for doing this, but now that the system knows, they're gonna try and even out the playing field once again. So I thought that this was this was relevant.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That I believe this has been around for at least a couple of years. In order to put it into production, you have to know at least 6 months ahead of time, and you got to design the circuit and everything else. So I imagine it's been around a while.
So here's the Lee mentioned one.
It's certainly worth noting that if you sit down at the poker table and you can't spot the mark after 30 minutes, the mark might be you. And we all have to consider this. The quote there was beautiful, Tone. The guy nailed it out. He's like, we're doing all the math. We have the same chips. We're solving the same problems. Pretty compatible here. We should be making money. They should be making money. But somehow they're making more, or they think they're going to make more. It was a really great quote. Congratulations. Good work.
Right. No, it was. And we kind of had the same thing, like on our podcast. Like, we couldn't figure out what the hell is Bitmain doing? Why are they blocking SegWit? We know they don't want bigger blocks. Been saying it for months. Thank you, Whale Panda. Bitmain doesn't even mine full blocks. Why the hell would they want bigger blocks? Like things just did not add up. I will say one thing though. I mean, Jihan is gonna screw this up, but he basically has a 1 week window, to fully save face, just come out and admit that he was stalling because he had this advantage, and that's it. Like say, yeah, we were voting for big blocks, we didn't want big blocks, because we had this advantage. Now, if he admits it, he says, well, we were smart enough to figure out the technology, we had the edge, and he doesn't have to admit, how much extra money they made with the edge. I mean, you can't get that money back. We're not Ethereum. We're not gonna, take the DAO. We're not gonna take Bitmain's rewards back here. No one is even gonna suggest it. But if he admits that he was only supporting Roger because of this reason and not because he wants big blocks, and goes with SegWit, I believe everything will be forgiven, because we do want Bitmain to secure the blockchain. Nobody wants to force Bitmain out of the system. We want them to continue securing the blockchain. And everything will be fine if he just admits this was the reason. Now, this also raises the question, who was manipulating who? Was Roger, now it sounds like Bitmain was more manipulating Roger than Roger was manipulating Bitmain. So this answers the other, long-awaited question of who's the ringleader and who's the follower here, or who's the gullible one. The big blockers or Bitmain?
We also have this tweet direct from Jihan's account, and it hasn't been deleted yet. It says, "Let me correct a FUD. Miners love Lightning Network. Lightning Network makes Bitcoin price higher, and miners love Bitcoin sold at a high price. Hence, miners love Lightning Network." Well, if you love Lightning Network, activate SegWit. The team will get you Lightning Network. How about that?
Well, so he was talking about that particular tweet, I think, in context of extension blocks, which was
I
big
did want
news
to bring
yesterday.
that up. I used to work at Perth. I wasn't going to say anything in general, but I do think that Christopher Jeffrey, we call him JJ, is a great programmer, and I'm excited by his ideas. But what do you guys think of extension blocks? Go ahead, Jimmy.
Well, so first of all, I have enormous respect for those developers. I think Joseph Poon and JJ are obviously very good at what they do. I mean, Bitcoin looks really good, and they're doing a great service. And I was pretty dismayed actually yesterday about how much crap Joseph was getting, especially from our Bitcoin people, just saying, hey, you're such a traitor, basically. And he was. And Greg Maxwell was pretty hard on him, saying,
Well, and before we go to the $64,000 question, just in general, it seems that the arguments are that the Purse and Jeffrey Bitcoin team introduced their proposal through the media rather than through the usual code review process. Other people have said it's 80% similar to a previous proposal. Perhaps they didn't comment much with that author, and then of course, the $64,000 question, will it fix the ASIC Boost problem?
Well, so Joseph Poon actually replied to the dev list, and he said, we'll get a commitment transaction into Coinbase, and that'll save it. That'll also do it. I mean, you got to understand, Joseph Poon is one of the authors of the Lightning Network paper. He knows what the hell he's doing, right? He's a very good developer. He's been doing it for a while, and it kills me that people have been crapping on his idea. He's trying to make the he's putting out an idea to get the community together, and all these people are basically crapping on him, and that sucks. That really hurts me.
And the idea there is that they're somehow colluding with the miners in this proposal.
Oh, that's what they've been accused of. I know Joseph. He's a really nice guy, and there was another article yesterday about Joseph Poon and the hug, right? That was him. That's just kind of the guy he is. He's just very friendly, very warm, like it's very hard to hate it, right? Like, but there are people crapping on them all over the place, so that kind of sucks. But anyway, that proposal has a lot of the same elements as SegWit. In fact, it's like it's in Joseph's best interest to make it as aligned to Lightning Network as possible. So that's kind of what he's tried to do. I don't think anyone thinks that it's ready, or it's going to take months of testing and all this other stuff. But it's a very interesting proposal. I think it needs to go through a lot of testing and review, and maybe more like there are lots of like numbers that are to be determined, like when do we start, or how big is the extension block going to be, and things like that. But it's a very interesting proposal, and I really wish people would consider it more than they are. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be happening. So that's kind of unfortunate.
Hey, Jimmy, can I throw my 2 cents in on this one as well? So, sure. I like Joseph Poon. I really do. I don't have problems with anyone in that. That I think there was 4 people in that paper. One of them is the CTO of Purse. But like, I don't have any issues with them. Like, I wouldn't attack. I would not have attacked them. I took a look at the extension blocks. I actually read the GitHub on it just the other day. And I provided my opinion on my podcast earlier today. And my view is the extension block, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of the idea. Now, again, not speaking as a developer, just speaking as, let's say, a developer project manager, which I've been over on Wall Street. Here's my problem with the extension blocks. And I'm showing the picture. So they do overlap. So you would have this extension block with bigger blocks. Here's the problem. You have the yellow block, which is maintained by Core. And if the extension block gets adopted, the Core team is not big supporters of it, right? So which means they're not going to want to support the code of the extension blocks. But they will be supporting the code of Lightning. And it's kind of like saying, well, if I was on Wall Street and we have a bunch of quants that just build a risk model, and then some other team that they don't even like build something on top of that risk model that utilizes it. And then the same team now has to build something on top of a team that they weren't a fan of, nor the project they were a fan of. And this cannot possibly work technologically, in my opinion, because there will be different people with different views on the subject. Even though these circles overlap, this project would not overlap. And that is why, from a non-technical view, why this can't possibly work. Like, this Lightning Network would have to like be a triple loop. It would have to be drawn over here. It would have to, you know what I mean? It's like what's that shape called? When you have like the 3.
A Venn diagram.
A Venn diagram, right. This Lightning Network was drawn incorrectly. It would have to be a Venn diagram, because some people are going to intersect in all 3. Some people will want to intersect only on the extension block. And some people are going to want to intersect inside the core. It might not be Lightning, but it will be some other external channel, because that's the only way to get it done, because you're not going to want to work with a team that is responsible for the maintenance of these 2 yellow and blue circles. What do you think about like my best thinking on the subject?
It's a very interesting structural argument, Tone. The other argument I've heard is the argument of urgency. If we have full blocks, if we need more transactions, SegWit has been tested the last 2 years. It's ready now. Whatever you think about extension blocks, it needs at least a year, maybe 2 years of testing. That's just what I'm hearing. But let's go to Jimmy for your thoughts.
Yeah, so as far as I know, that diagram is referring specifically to where the SegWit transactions will live. It's entirely in the extension block. So the Lightning Network will have to interact with the extension block only, and not anything in the core in the canonical block. They did implement it in Bitcoin, which is the JavaScript node library, Node.js Bitcoin node. Sorry, that's a little difficult to say. I would imagine if this got adopted, that Core would have their own implementation that would be compatible. I like, how likely is that? I don't know. Like how which one would be referenced? I don't know. And I think this speaks to sort of your point, Tone, that that when you have two different implementations and you don't know which one's the reference, it can get kind of tricky. Like figuring out like who owns it, how do you improve it, what do you do with it, how do you fix bugs and things of that nature. That said, I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was very important that the authors were all very much, like they love SegWit, right? But they sort of see the writing on the wall as far as like minor activation of SegWit, which is that it's probably not going to happen as a minor activation, though the events of today may change things.
Exactly. They published their stuff about a week too early. But like you said, I mean, that's a good point. What you said, that the SegWit would be inside the extension blocks. But remember, SegWit doesn't have to. I mean, you don't need SegWit for Lightning Network. You just need to fix transaction malleability. So in this situation, why wouldn't a BIP come into the into the 1 megabyte protocol in order to just fix transaction malleability and then stick Lightning right on top of that? And also, again, like when you draw a diagram like this, once you put it with this extension block, it's nice and cute with the diagram that they're overlapping. I know I'm not sharing my screen anymore, but what does that mean after the extension? Like, again, I'm not all that technical. I just have the general concepts. Wouldn't it make any kind of change going forward on the 1 megabyte so much more difficult? Because now you also have to make sure it's compliant with all the code of the extension block. I mean, I think this is insane.
Yeah, it's honestly like a lot similar to SegWit, and I think they modeled a lot of the same concepts. SegWit does a lot of the same things, right? They have sort of their area in the block where you add a bunch of SegWit transactions. They have witness transaction data, and they have witness transaction IDs, whose Merkle root gets into the Coinbase, which is what Greg Maxwell is proposing. Anyway, with that, you have to build Lightning off of that, because all the SegWit transactions are not malleable. You can do Lightning without fixing malleability, but then you have like payment channels that have
that's a lot harder. And I think that the biggest difficulty, again, I'm just guessing here. I think I think it'll make privacy so much more difficult with a Lightning channel without the transaction malleability fix. That's kind of my general understanding.
Yeah, it's hard to say because no one's really used it yet, right? Like,
well, yeah, because no one wants to put in the effort of building out a payment channel without getting around transaction malleability, because they know just like Murphy's Law, the day their 1 year development project ends, the following day transaction malleability would get fixed.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. There's a lot of ways to do it, and I mean, you don't have to use Lightning to do it. There's I think Ryan X Charles is making his own trustless payment hub. It's a very basic payment channel network where it's hub and spoke, and that's entirely possible, right? But yeah, this is an interesting thing. I think as a community, we owe it to these guys. Honestly, they've all contributed tremendously to Bitcoin to at least give it a shot, right? At least look at it, review it, and give it a decent review, then just sort of like dismiss it on grounds like, well, there's SegWit. Well, this thing isn't going to happen for like many months, even if we started working on it, on getting it in tomorrow. And SegWit activation ends in November. That's 7 short months from now. At that point,
I have heard from Eric Lombroso that was just kind of a date they set out there. They can extend it, or they could activate.
Of course they can. They can extend it, and I think they're probably going to lower it to 90% miners, because BTC, Bitcoin.com pool and via BTC pool, they ain't going nowhere. So if those two pools make up 9% of hashing power combined, I have a feeling that the core team is gonna lower the threshold to just below the power of Bitcoin.com and Via BTC combined. And they're gonna let everyone else except those two pools make the call. That's just my opinion. I have zero insider information. When people try to tell me insider information, I ask them not to, because then I can speculate. So I prefer to be like in this position. I was going to say, I wanted to get your thoughts. Again, I'm really happy with this news. It's going to put me out of my misery, because either SegWit's getting in or this whole experiment freaking dies. And at this point, I just wanted to resolve one way or another, because if the miners don't get in line and if the miners don't do what's best for the ecosystem, this whole thing goes out the window. And if Bitcoin, you think any other of these altcoins would be able to do it? Hell no. So I think this is the first step into getting SegWit in there and get this whole drama finally over with.
Yeah, I'm not
everything
quite
got
as
all
optimistic.
existential here.
I have to say I'm not quite as optimistic or pessimistic in some strange, weird way. To some degree, this news will affect things. Like, will this give the Bitcoin community more of an appetite for user-activated soft forks? I don't know. It very well might. Will this end up, crashing Bitcoin and splitting it into two coins? I don't know. But they're all certainly possibilities, and like in any sort of complex dynamic system, like tiny inputs have like enormous consequences. So who knows what people are working on right now? We had like two things that came out in the last 2 days that changed the conversation significantly, right? Extension blocks and Gregory's proposal. There are probably like lots of other people working on similarly influential things that will come out over the next 3 months, 6 months, 7 months, who knows? My take on the BIP9 signaling activation period, they certainly can extend it, lower the threshold, but this is the sort of thing that that the Bitcoin devs will argue about and figure out what the right thing to do is. But if it's still at like 30%,
that's a political issue, not a technical issue. It's a marketing issue. We can change the date. We can change the threshold. Come on, guys. Right. It's not set in stone. It's not a technical problem. We could just change it. It's numbers.
You can, but like you're stuck with it for the duration. The reason why you can't like pull SegWit right now is because so many clients already have the SegWit code on their machines, right? A lot of nodes are already running it, so you can't just pull it. You have to let it go the length, and I don't know. Like my take is that the Bitcoin developers are not going to put a proposal out there that's like and set it up for failure. If they know it's going to fail, I think they would pull it and go with some other thing or compromise or whatever. Which is why I think extension blocks is worth looking at. If after 7 months you're still at 30% and nobody's like signaling for it, and something, this thing has been tested for the last 7 months. Now it starts looking a little better, right? Like it didn't look great before, but now it's like, hey, you know what? You get the benefits of SegWit. The people that want 2 megabyte blocks get a lot of what they want, and SegWit is kind of dead at this point. Well, maybe we should consider it at this point. That's the sort of like, I think, forward thinking that we need to have right now. Otherwise, it's just sort of going to be like, all right, well, we'll just clash and fight forever, right? Like I don't think that's a good way forward. So
we'll just clash and fight forever. I think we're nearing the end of the show. Tone, do you have any more final comments before I go to my special announcement and then perhaps a poem?
Yeah, I think so. I just got another heads up in direct messages. Tor, when did he tweet this out? Earlier today. Like Gregory Maxwell is accusing Joseph Poon of working with like Bitmain to get these extension blocks. So I don't know, man. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. So it's Man, I really want to take a break from Twitter, but it's almost impossible.
Yeah,
so there is
blood out there. A lot of
Yeah.
blood.
All right. No, I think I've said everything I needed to say. We have 2 more days to think about this before we do our the Bitcoin Group podcast in 48 hours, a little less.
That's right. But we may have something else going on this Friday. I have a very interesting graphic here that I just put together before the show. It's got a Bitcoin QR address that you could scan and donate. It's got a number. It says $300. Looks like an airplane's involved. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm talking to some people. Obviously, donations are one way with Bitcoin, but if you guys had $300 in Bitcoin, maybe if a couple guys had $30 and a couple other guys had $50, and maybe if there were some donations in here, and then something might happen. But again, this is all up in the air. I just got an interesting email, and I might have to buy a plane ticket really shortly, and then that would be like a little expense. But this might provide some entertainment for you in the midst of this long and sorrowful existential crisis of Bitcoin scaling. Let's go back to Jimmy one more time before I read a poem.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to thank all your followers because I just got my 1,000th follower on Twitter. I'm sure it's somebody that is listening to the show. So thank you so much for that. It's easy to kind of get freaked out about every little thing that comes through. I want to caution everyone. You know what? Like they're gonna be like this kind of announcement over the next few months all the time, I think, and it's not going to really stop. And I was listening to a Naval Ravikant podcast earlier today, and one of the things that he said is, it helps a lot if you just don't get outraged, right? Like if you can control your emotions, you're going to be so much happier. I'm saying that as much for myself as anybody else out there, because that's helped me a lot just in dealing with this. Because like Tone was saying, it's hard to stay off Twitter. It's hard to stay off all the outrage and all the different emotions that you might be going through with this. That said, I really hope that we don't divorce as a community. I want us to stay together. I think Bitcoin's stronger together than it is apart. And I really hope that we can do that. Hard to know how to get there, but I think as a community we can figure it out.
It's good to go to Jimmy for the therapy minute there at the end. And thanks so much to everyone who's donating. I know maybe you didn't pause the screen, but don't worry, I'm going to put the QR code up again. And thanks so much to our live viewers, everyone who thumbs up and shared. We had 135 live viewers, and hopefully we'll have some more after. But as promised, the walrus and the carpenter. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd, because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily, because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It's very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. The sea was wet as wet could be. The sands were dry as dry. You could not see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead. There were no birds to fly. The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be grand. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose the walrus said that they could get it clear? I doubt it, said the carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. Oh, oysters, come and walk with us, the walrus did beseech. A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk, along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each. The eldest oyster looked at him, but never a word said he. The eldest oyster winked his eye and shook his heavy head, meaning to say he did not choose to leave the oyster bed. But 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their face were washed, their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd, because, they hadn't any feet. 4 other oysters followed them, and yet another 4. And thick and fast they came at last, and more and more and more, all hopping through the frothy waves and scrambling to the shore. The walrus and the carpenter walked a mile or so, and then they rested on a rock, conveniently low, and all the little oysters stood and waited in a row. The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings. But wait a bit, the oysters cried, before we have our chat, for some of us are out of breath, and all of us are fat. No hurry, said the carpenter. They thanked him much for that. A loaf of bread, the walrus said, is what we chiefly need. Pepper and vinegar, besides, are very good indeed. Now, if you're ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed. But not on us, the oysters cried, turning a little blue. After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do. The night is fine, the walrus said. Do you admire the view? It was so nice of you to come, and you are so very nice. The carpenter said nothing, but cut us another slice. I wish you were not quite so deaf. I've had to ask you twice. It seems a shame, the walrus said, to play them such a trick, after we've brought them out so far and made them trot so quick. The carpenter said nothing, but the butter spread too thick. I weep for you, the walrus said. I deeply sympathize. With sobs and tears he sorted out those of the largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eyes. Oh, oysters, said the carpenter, you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again? But the answer came there none. And this was scarcely odd, because they'd eaten every one. Up, we're out of the next time. Until next time, this has been Bitcoins. Mad Bitcoins. Mad Bitcoins. Bye-bye.